With the Grizzlies and the T-Wolves standing at 1-1 apiece in this series, which team do you have more faith moving forward in this series?
I mean, the Grizzlies woke up. That I'm not saying that it's impossible for the Timberwolves to go and go and upset them in the series. I'm not saying that obviously Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards aren't a dynamic duo enough for this team to go and provide the upset. But when you look at everything that Memphis has gone through all season, if you look at everything that they have been able to do without their best player in Ja Morant, who was an MVP candidate for a large portion of the year, they're going to get that together. They're going to figure it out. They're going to find a way to win games, and they're going to win gritty games, and they're going to find a way to just dominate other teams. And on paper, I truly believe that Memphis is a better team. The reason why I'm going to side with Memphis is also because, for whatever reason, since D'Angelo Russell has left Brooklyn, he has been an absolute ghost. He was only on Golden State for a couple of weeks, so I'm not really going to sit here and say he was a stud on Golden State because he got traded to Minnesota relatively quickly. He hasn't really been himself because he's been injury prone and injury ridden over the last two seasons. In the last two games, I think he scored a total of like 22 points. He scored 11 points in the first two games. Where is the ice in my veins, D'Lo? Where is the D'Lo that has always sparked the plug and always gotten the crowd involved and always somebody that was just an energy bug or an energizer bunny on the bench, somebody that's always been able to entertain and provide a spark. I'm not seeing that. And without that third wheel, without that third person to really combat Ja Morant, Desmond Bain, Steven Adams, just Derek, is it Dylan Brooks? Yeah, it is Dylan Brooks. I don't really know how Minnesota's going to be able to compete. You're putting way too much pressure on a 20, 21-year-old kid in Anthony Edwards that we all know is ready for, but that's a lot for a kid to have to shoulder the weight of a franchise on him in the postseason. We all know that Karl Anthony Towns is going to get his 25 to 30 points a night with, of course, his double-digit rebounds and his impact on the defensive end. But they're going to need some help from the bench. They're going to need some help from D'Lo, and without that, I think that Memphis is just going to continue to win because I think their team is better. I think that they have been in the postseason before. They have the experience. They know what it's like to struggle. They know what it's like to go through adversity. And again, like I said earlier, even without Ja, they were like 21-2 or 21-3 all season long. So they have their MVP caliber player. He led the team in scoring last game. He led both teams in scoring, and that was only at a 23 point game. He had 32 in the first game, and that was in a loss. So Ja Morant's healthy. This team is going to find a way to turn it around. A blowout win like that at home is a way to kind of just carry it over into the next game or into the rest of the series. I think that Memphis carries on and wins this game in about 6 games. I'm going to give Memphis, oh my goodness, I'm going to give Minnesota one more game because I think that Anthony Edwards is that impactful, and I think that him and Karl Anthony Towns will have another big game where they combine for over 60. But if D'Angelo doesn't step up, this is going to be a struggle, and I think that unfortunately the young and spark plugged Minnesota Timberwolves basketball team, who improved all year, will end up falling to the better Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I see it is when I look at these two teams and which team I have more faith in, I got to side with the Grizzlies. And it's not just because of what they've done this season. Granted, were the number 2 seed in the Western Conference, which is a pretty high mark for a relatively young team. It's just when I look at this team on paper compared to what the Timberwolves have, I just think that they have more depth. Ja Morant, like Kevin said, was an MVP candidate throughout most of the season before he had some injury issues in the last quarter of the year. But I mean, outside of that, you had Desmond Bain to work with, Dylan Brooks, Steven Adams, and you have role players like Kyle Anderson, Zaire Williams, Xavier Tillman, even Brandon Clark. I mean, these guys, despite the fact that they may not be well-known household names, when they get their opportunities to shine, they've been able to step up, not just throughout the regular season, but even in the playoffs. In game 2 specifically, when you look at the box score for the Grizzlies specifically, like Kevin said, Ja Morant only had 23 points, but Brandon Clark had 13. Xavier Tillman had 13. Zaire Williams had 13. Then you could look at Desmond Bain. He had 16, and Jaren Jackson Jr. also had 16. So they were able to get contributions from not just Ja, but from a wide-ranging cadre of players. When you look at Minnesota specifically, essentially the way that I see it is their team is largely dominant on 2 players, Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. And the reason why I say 2 and not 3 is because D'Angelo Russell has not shown me enough that he's somebody that Minnesota can rely on for a postseason series. I just haven't seen it yet. I think in game 1, I think he only scored 10 points. In game 2, he only had 11. And for D'Angelo Russell, who's had some pretty solid moments throughout his NBA career, if he's only putting up those types of point totals in a relatively competitive playoff series, I can't rely on that. I can rely on Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns simply just because they are getting more burn, they're getting more playing time. But Anthony Edwards, like Kevin said, is relatively young still. He's in his early 20s. Karl Anthony Towns is one of the veterans on this team. And Karl Anthony Towns is not even that old to begin with. He's still in his 20s. Overall, when you have a team that's really dependent on two players to really kind of carry the weight for this team, I can't rely on that. I just think that the Grizzlies, they have a better roster from top to bottom. They have a more deep roster. And despite the fact that they dropped game 1, I'm going to side with them. And I think when it comes down to it, Ja Morant is the difference maker. Ja Morant, despite the fact that he's young, has shown me that his dynamic athletic ability is a huge facet to his game. And not only that, he's able to knock down shots consistently, and he's able to essentially set up his role players and to set up the rest of his teammates to be able to succeed. Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns with the Timberwolves, they can do that. I just don't think that they can do it to the extent that Ja Morant can. I think overall, Ja Morant is the difference maker in this series. And I think overall, when the series comes to an end, I think the Grizzlies will win this series outright. I don't know if it's going to be in 5 games. I will probably see it in 6 or maybe even 7, depending on how competitive Minnesota is. But I just have more faith in the Grizzlies moving forward. It would be a real shock to me if the Timberwolves upset the Grizzlies. I think it would shock the entire NBA world if that happened. But overall, I have too much faith in Ja Morant, and I don't think that he's going to let me down in this sense. So I'm siding with the Grizzlies, and I see them getting this series, despite the fact that it's 1-1 at this current moment in time.